Hello. Welcome to Men Are the Prize, the podcast. It is me, your host, of course, Harvey. How you doing? How's the week, the month, the year, the day, the minute? I hope everything is doing well for you. I hope you're feeling good. Another great episode coming. You know, I like to get a few words in with you first. As we're recording, we are still in the holiday season. And obviously, when you're seeing this, that time has passed. And I hope the holidays have been great for you. Hope you've had great time to spend with your family. I hope everybody got what they wanted, gifts and all that time. But most importantly, the togetherness that the holidays provide. And I hope you took advantage of that. And I hope you enjoyed it. This episode is going to be great because this is my wheelhouse. You know who I am. I am a stay-at-home dad at four. If you give me a reason, an excuse to talk about fatherhood, then you know I'm going to have fun with this. And there's no better guest than who I have today. Let me introduce to you. This is Michael Fineman. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, Harvey. How are you, brother?
I'm well. Thank you very much. This is going to be fun. I like talking about fatherhood. I do this podcast. It's masculinity. We're talking about being a man. And I think there are very few things that define a man than how he raises his kids. I think it's so insanely important. So I think we're going to have a great conversation. But if you have listened or watched before, you know what I love. Here's a piece of paper. I love a good bio. Let's read a bio. Michael is a Jesus follower, a father, a businessman, entrepreneur, and the founder of the Dad Link, a community of men becoming the best dads they can be. Michael often tells people that in order to become a great father, we must learn to become a good son. I really like that. And I'm going to ask you about that soon because I think that's interesting. I read bios first because since this is a podcast for men, you know, we don't get our flowers. We don't get to hear positivity like that a lot. We don't get to hear all the good stuff that we've done. You created a space for dad that immediately makes you like my hero, immediately. So one, what's it like hearing the positivity that you've done in your life? What's it good to hear affirmations? This wasn't a deep, but the fact that it's a creation, a space for dads. What's it like read back what you've done and helped this world out?
Yeah, very timely. At a time like this during the holidays, it's hard to get attention on the internet, and a lot of the things that we're putting out are getting a few, looks here and there and some attention, but it's hard. Starting a new program like this is hard. And so I appreciate the encouragement. It's been great. That's awesome.
Oh, no problem. I'm glad. Every man, and we get it so rarely, should hear positivity. We should get affirmations. It shouldn't be something we'd have to search for. It should be something I should be dodging. Like, oh my God, another nice thing to say. Wow. But I'm glad I was able to do that. And just give me a brief idea. Why did you create the Dad Link?
Yeah. So I had a tough childhood coming up, and kind of was out on my own at 15 and just went for it. And over the years, it just had a lot of things to work through from that. And I had a father in the picture, but several times in my life, I just completely rejected him, and for numerous reasons. And now we have a great relationship. I spoke with him this morning. I've completely forgiven him, and I don't hold any of that. But what it taught me was the importance of the approval of a father, and what that looked like with and without, and that I wanted to be the best dad I could ever be. And putting yourself out here like this, talking about being a dad to guys that, let's just face it, we're pretty closed off to this kind of thing, is hard. It takes a lot of guts to step out there because, a lot of men don't want to deal with this issue. But I've learned, like you have, that dealing with these things and being open about it and talking to other men and other dads is where I really grew. And then watching the relationship between the father and the son, Jesus and the father, that reciprocal obedience, relationship, love, unconditional love, really changed the way that I looked at being a father, because that's how he fathers me. So now that's how I want to father my kids.
I love that. I like that a lot. Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's get into this. All right. So if you have watched or listened to this podcast, you know what I do. Prize is the word that I use. The letters in the word prize represent characteristics that I think are good for men. If you haven't, welcome. I hope you enjoy this and you found a great episode to join on. We're talking about daddyhood, which is, again, something I enjoy. I'm going to tweak this a little bit. When I ask these questions, when I talk about these words, I typically frame them in the masculinity. So
Yeah.
what is your purpose as a man? Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to ask these questions in terms of being a father. So we're going to make it focus a little bit more. The first letter in the word prize is P. The word is purpose, reason for which something is done or created or for which something exists. So what is your purpose as a father?
So my purpose as a father is to raise children that are confident, that are self-sufficient, that have their own relationship with the Lord directly. And I often say to my son, I'm going to be with you for the rest of my life, son, but not with you for the rest of yours. And I need you to have that same relationship to know that you can go to the Father, which he's already doing at 16. It's amazing. But my purpose is to help men become better dads, especially when they didn't have a good role model of a father, which I find more and more and more every day. And if you didn't learn through your father's actions how to be a father, then quite frankly, you don't know how to be one. And you might be able to do 180 degrees and do exactly what he didn't do, but that doesn't mean that you have a plan or you're able to be intentional because you're not making a plan. And that's what I want to help dads do.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I ended up doing this podcast is one, men talking. Two, I'm not the biggest fan of how fathers are portrayed in general. As a
Right.
black man, first and foremost, there's this stereotype that we're not around, that we
Right.
don't exist, that there's a bunch of, great moms out there or not so great moms raising kids and there's no dads around, which is garbage because we're here more than any other father in any race of any kind. We're around. So I don't know. It bothers me in terms of I'm not like babysitting my kids. I'm not helping mom. There's these terms that they talk about. One thing that bothered me so much, and I think it's just me. Like the most important job a father can do is love the mom. I lost my mind when I read that or heard that because yes, it's important, but that's not my main job as a father. That's my main job as a husband.
Right.
But as a father, it is not for her to be happy. It's to raise the kids. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that she shouldn't be happy, but there's this tendency to kind of take away the importance of a father raising the kids. And it's more about just making sure mom is good so she can do all the work.
Right.
And because I'm the primary, because I'm the one who takes care of these kids, I'm not just hanging on until mom shows up and then they got it. So that was another reason I did this podcast, because we fathers are important, just as important as mom. I'm not a
Very
babysitter.
important.
I'm not the assistant to the president of the
Right.
parish. I am dad. I am here for business and my children are my business.
That's right.
So when I see this dad link stuff promoting fatherhood, I love it.
Yeah.
So the purpose, you said, is to help that. So here's a question. Is there ever a way to be a perfect dad?
Only if you're God.
So what does that mean? Elaborate on that. Why is he a perfect dad?
God is a perfect father because he's always available. You're always first priority to him. And we're going to make mistakes. We're men. We're people. We're going to make mistakes. But I think the key in that is to be open about that with your kids. When you tell your kids you made a mistake and ask for their forgiveness and move on, the impact that makes in their lives is so much greater than most dads can ever fathom. And a lot of dads want to sweep everything under the rug. Just men don't want to admit their faults. And it's hard to admit your fault. But to me, that's part of integrity. So I will always admit my faults. Even when my son was younger, I'm a single dad now to a 16-year-old. When my son was younger, I was very intentional about saying, you know what? I didn't handle that well. I lost my cool, or I didn't really listen to what you said. And I made a quick decision that, I shouldn't have. What that did is that opened a line of communication between he and I that people would covet, because when they see us communicate, they always pull me aside and say, oh my gosh, how did you get to that level with your son? And it's because of that.
I like that. That's a tough thing to do, to kind of show that you're human in front of your kids.
Yeah.
That I'm mortal. that I can make mistakes. And I have three, and you just have, I didn't ask this. You have a 16-year-old son. So
Yeah.
any other children? So just so you got a kid. That's it.
Yeah. And I have 3 other stepchildren as well.
Oh, okay. Any daughters in there?
Yeah. 2 daughters. Yep.
I got you. So
Yep.
4 kids for me in total, 3 daughters and a son.
Yep.
And I'll get to that. Just brought something else up.
Yeah.
But it occurs to me that talking to your kids, and when you mess up, the level of maturity, and I think that's the word for me, to just say to my son, you know what, you did something that I really didn't like. And you may have had a reason in your mind that you thought made it okay, but I was upset about how you handled it. And before I allowed you to speak so that we could talk about it, I just handled it with anger, and I shouldn't have done it that way. I'm not saying what you did was right, but the way I handled it wasn't right. There is a level of maturity. That's a man right there. That's what I love about that, to say, you know what, you did something wrong, but so did I.
Yep.
And I can apologize to you. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
Yeah. How do you teach your son to own up to his actions and take responsibility for his actions when you're not doing it?
Exactly.
And they're too smart for that.
Mm-hmm. Kids they pick up stuff. But they're also learning, and they don't know, because while I'm sitting there apologizing to him and telling him about this, I don't think he's really picking it up. But what I think it does is that it's like, you know what, my dad, who in most cases is the idol, is the person that you look up to. He's the person. He messes up.
Yeah.
And not only does he mess up, but then he said it, and he apologized, and he dealt with it, and he apologized to me about it. You're building confidence in a kid. You're building humanity. You're building empathy in a kid. My dad messes up and said and apologized to me about it. I can go into the world and I can mess up because my dad messed up and he dealt with it.
Yeah.
I want to be like that guy. These little lessons, I think they're so important. They're so important. But I have 3 daughters. And for me, when I do that, it's more that just, oh, I can be human and whatever. But it's all these, okay, I'm going to go out into the world, and, you know, I'm eventually going to meet a guy. And there's all this, that the girl's looking for her dad. And to a degree, that's true. And what guy she finds should be that kind of empathetic, that kind of human, that guy who recognizes that he messes up. Yeah. We have such power with our kids, not just in the moment, but in their future and in their relationships and in their jobs and in everything that we do. Being a father is so insanely important. What I was going to ask you, because it came to me, is, and we're not perfect, do you treat your girls and your son different?
There was a pretty big gap in between them, but I did treat my girls different in that I was much more strict and overly strict. And in fact, I don't think I did a great job because I think I was too strict. And with that, I learned a lot about what I wanted to be as a father and what I was not. And I found my shortcomings and studied and learned and prayed and learned how to be a better father, so that with my next child, my 16-year-old now, that I would not be the same. And there's a methodology I learned through a program that we served at for many years. And it's the roles of parenthood. And it starts with caregiver, goes to cop, then coach, then consultant. And these have to be done in order to, and sometimes they overlap and sometimes you're doing 2 at once. But if you don't graduate from one to the next, you haven't earned the right from the child to move into the next role. So the hardest thing for dads is to switch from cop to coach, which is about 12 or 13 years old, when you have to start letting them make big mistakes without telling them what to do. So hard, especially for a driver like me. I'm just a doer in business. I'm like, get it done. You know, it's really hard for me not to say to my son, boy, do it this way and don't ask why. But I'm his coach now. And so I can't do that. I can say, listen, here are the benefits to doing it this way. Here's how I learned the hard way. Here were the consequences. I don't want you to face those. However, if you think you need to face those, go ahead and do it your way. I'll help you through the consequences, but they're coming. Be aware. And then after a while, when I say, hey, I have an idea, his ears perk up. E.F. Hutton is talking, right? And he's like, what do you got? Because he knows that I'm going to keep him, but I don't keep him from all struggles. In fact, I'll let him walk right into them sometimes, because adversity is where we build character. And if I stop all adversity in his life, I'm not going to help him grow. So some things I'm watching, I'm going, boy, I see where this is going. But I've coached him early on, and I'm not going to say another word. I'm not going to remind him. I'm going to let him fall in that pit. And then I'm going to, once he's in there, I'm going to look over the edge and go, you want a hand up? And I'm going to bring him out. And sometimes I let him sit in there for a minute and find his way out on his own with the Lord, because the Lord will pull you right out of those pits. But it's so important with girls to, first of all, show them what kind of man they're looking for, like you said. So I think dating your daughters is massive. You cannot put that aside. In fact, I spoke with a friend, and he had 3 daughters, and he found out later that after each date, the daughter would run in the room with the other 2, and they would quiz her. Where did you go? What did you eat? What was it like? Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. And they really looked forward to it. He had no idea any of this was going on between these siblings, but he found out later. And when he shared that with me, I was like, man, that is powerful, powerful stuff. Because they're learning what kind of man to accept and what they won't accept. And if they have older brothers, they'll learn it from them too. If they have older brothers that are hunters and fix trucks and do all this stuff, they're not going to do well with a husband that doesn't do all that. They're going to expect that from him. Mm-hmm. So it's really important as your father that you help shape and mold the reality of what they're looking for by being that guy, the first one they love.
I think the hardest thing about being a father is watching your kids fail, and you know it's coming.
Yeah, it's tough.
And you know it. I have a 19-year-old son. My son, he's 19. He's going to be 20 in a few months. And I watch him. I can see from miles do this. And it's like, and it's, how it's easier for me to just snatch him by the neck and bring him back.
Yeah.
It's so much harder to just, damn it, like, no, don't do that. And I've got this inner monologue. I'm like, listen, don't buy that because you don't need it now. Because right now he's 19, and they prey on these kids. He's 19, and I had a whole discussion with him on finance and credit and all that. But I'm a 19-year-old boy, and these people want to give me money, and I want a PlayStation. I want to buy these games, and I want to do blah blah blah. And I'm like, don't do it. Later on, you're gonna want to do things, and it's so just he's right here. Just come back.
So hard. I call it doing dumb stuff. We both call it that, like doing dumb stuff. And I said, look, I do dumb stuff. Mm-hmm. But some of the stuff that you're coming up on, I've done all that dumb stuff. Mm-hmm. So, learn by example, but sometimes they have to find their way, man. Like you said, it's so difficult to have these tough conversations with them that, like my son is heavy into basketball. Okay. There are times that I've got to rip him a new one. I don't want to, but I've got to really agitate him to get him to move because he's not moving on something. And I know that if I agitate him, he'll be upset for a moment, he'll move, and then he'll come back after he's pondered on it and go, yeah, good call, Dad. Well, I don't want to have to do that. I love my son. I want him to always be smiling and happy, but that's not life, man. And I need him to have, like I said, watching and letting them go into those adversity pits. Man, that is hard, isn't it? Like, it's ridiculous. You're like, there's spikes at the bottom. That's going to hurt, dude. I can't watch.
Oh my God. I agree entirely. And one thing as a father, when I watch my son make these mistakes and make these errors that I see coming that he just doesn't see, I always hearken back because I can talk a big game, but I did that. I know I did it. And I know my dad was like,
yes,
probably the same, except my dad was not the kind of watch me make mistake. My dad just snatched me.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, my dad must have been pissed. Wow, doing this stuff. There's a method to I'm watching you, but I'm also feeling the moment because I was in it.
Yeah, I want him to make the mistakes while I'm here, while I can help him, while I can coach him through the consequences. He's going to make the mistakes, but like if your father didn't do that, my guess is some of those mistakes you made later on when you had to deal with it over the phone with your dad, or by yourself. And I'm trying to avoid that. I'm not trying to keep him from strife, but when he's in it, I'd like him to be in my home when it happens because I can help him manage his way through that.
Yes, that's a big one.
Yeah.
You're going to make mistakes. Do it in my view. I can see you doing it. I'd rather you mess up here because I am your fallback. I am backup for you.
Yep.
And that makes it harder.
Yeah.
Because to a degree, watching you make the mistake as opposed to maybe finding out about it later, that makes it harder. But that's the benefit of a good dad, of
Yeah.
just being
Yeah.
present.
And you're forming their identity. You know, going back on what you said earlier on the P for prize, one of our purposes in our children is that we instill identity into our kids. And I had a program before this called Identity University because we're in such an identity crisis right now. These kids don't know who they are. And and some young adults also, it's really hard to watch. But the Lord led me into this, showing me that I can help young people find their identity. And I did that a lot. I still do. But if I can help the fathers find their identity, and sometimes those fatherless kids I meet are 55 years old, if I can help them find their identity, they can then instill it in their children. That's the natural order. They get their identity from the Father in heaven, then they become the father, they give their identity to their kids. That's the natural order. And that's why there's 3 links in the chain of the dad link.
I like that. I like that. All right, let's keep it moving. The next letter in the word prize is R. The word is resilience. The capacity to recover quickly from difficulties and toughness in regards to being a father. Can you think of a situation, a moment? And I think you kind of mentioned it a bit more in terms of being a son, but let's stick into the fatherhood. Can you think of a situation, something that happened that maybe you didn't handle the best, but you really learned from it? Something that happened as a father that kind of showed you the resilience and the skill to be a father that maybe you didn't know you had before.
Yeah. So when my son was younger, he was very sensitive, and I wasn't used to that. I come from a different era, as you do too.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
from the rub some dirt in it and take a lap boy era. And so
Very much so.
I didn't know how to handle that. And actually, I tried to bark it out of him, and it made it worse, way worse. And I had to learn. I actually went and got training from a therapist on how do I change my mindset, and how do I not instantly go, hey, I hate weakness, go at it. And so that created resilience in me, in that I can go both ways with him now. I can help him with his toughness, but I can also help him when he's feeling vulnerable. And I didn't know how to do that because as a guy, I don't know how to nurture a kid. It's not natural for me. So I literally had to go learn those skill sets because I wanted to be able to be that for him in any way, shape, or form I could. And it changed everything. It changed who I was as a father. It changed how I saw him, but it changed his vulnerability in being able to open up.
I have a 19-year-old son who, if he will come over and hug me, and if I don't let him go, he'll stay. He just won't move.
Mine too.
He loves a good hug. And just to be clear, just you may not know. So I have 4 kids, but the first 2 were my wife, so she had a previous relationship. So those first 2 are my stepkids.
Yeah.
He grew up with that. I met him when he was 4, but he grew up, he was born, he was in bed with his mom, and they were just connected. So I didn't get that kind of relation. I don't have that with my dad. There's hugging and all that stuff. So it was really weird. Really weird that he wanted a hug and he would just stay.
Yeah.
Hug. And that kind of intimacy, which that word sounds bad, but it's not. That kind of intimacy with a parent is incredibly important. And it's still a battle because he's 19 and he's bigger than me. Like he's a 200-pound boy and just wrap me up. And I'm like, this doesn't feel straight.
Yeah.
This feels weird. But I have a 17-year-old daughter who will come over and hug me and it's fine. Those are moments. I feel bad about those because it's okay for my daughter to hug me. That's what she's supposed to do. But it feels weird when my 19-year-old son does it. And that's been a battle that I've been dealing with, that level of intimacy that he wants. He just wants to hug his dad. He wants it back.
Yeah.
And becoming a father has made me a better man.
That's awesome. I did a story on that once, and I call it the 3-minute hug. And I started when he was younger. And I instilled that in him. He didn't particularly like to be touched as much back then. But I started hugging him. And what I would do, I created purpose in it for myself. So because same thing you said, it was weird. It's just hard. I wasn't used to that. So what I did is I created purpose, and I would speak affirmations the whole time I was holding them. Man, I love who you're becoming as a man. You're so strong. I saw what you did the other day when you didn't think I was looking. I'm so proud of you. I love the fact that you're working so hard on your homework or on your sport or whatever it is. And so then for me, that took the weirdness out, because now I had a purpose. And the whole time I'm holding on, I'm focusing on that. Now I love a good hug, and he's the same. He'll come over and I'll let go, way before him, and I grab back on because he's not ready to let go. But all the chemicals and the endorphins and all the things that are exchanged in that moment really create trust and intimacy and closeness and love and all of the things that we desire as humans. And right now, I've trained my son very early on. When you're ready to get married is when you start dating. So let's just play ball and have fun. And he agrees with that. But he still needs that nurturing touch. So it has to come from a healthy place, which I'm the one that is able to give it to him, and his mother is able to give it to him. And so, that's our role, to fulfill that need for healthy human touch until they get to that point. And it's weird. Guys have such a hard time talking about this. And I'm like, look, sweep your testosterone to the side for a minute. Let's just have a conversation. How did you feel with your mom when you were sick, when you were a kid? What'd you need? You needed your mommy, right? And maybe if your dad wasn't so tough on you back then, which didn't work out that great, maybe you would have accepted it from him if your mom wasn't home. And they're like, oh yeah, okay. That's what I'm talking about. That's it.
Wow. That's wonderful. It brought something to mind. As I hear you talking about being a father and what you do, it sounds like you're learning a lot as you're teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. I've continued to learn. I'm never going to come into this group and community and say I'm the expert, because I'm not. I've done a great job with my son. I'll give myself credit for that, because he's such an amazing young man. But his obedience and all that was such a big part of that. And God did all of it, if you ask me. But what I am doing is creating community, not just for them, but for myself, where we can all learn from one another. Because listen, iron sharpens iron. Men learn from one another. And this is how we become better dads. And we share ideas and, struggles. And, a lot of dads come in and their teenagers won't even talk to them. Like, they just won't talk to me. They talk to their friends. Well, how do you regain that? Have you lost it? No. And when you have 5 other dads around, some of them, 60, 70 years old, that kids are out of the house, that have so much wisdom to share, we've created a community where we can share with one another, learn from one another in a safe environment to be able to open up and talk about what's going on.
And that's so important. It's
Yeah,
so
it's huge.
important. That support is amazing. I think they're one and the same, but I still want to ask, do you prefer learning as a father or teaching as a father?
Both. I will learn from any dad that has something to share, and I will share anything I've learned with any father that wants to listen.
I like that a lot.
My favorite subject, for sure.
Oh yeah, I've always felt like I was a pretty good person in general, but being a father enhances. It kind of forces you to put a mirror to your face, because for me, for me, and this might seem strange in a way, I feel like I'm sending a bunch of little mini me's out into the world.
You absolutely, it's your legacy, man. Like, they're watching everything you do. You could tell them 1,000 times what to do, but you walk it out once, they might do it.
Got that right. So I'm like, I got to make these good people. So for my son, I'm chivalrous. It's just something I've always done. And I'm like, so I open the door, but if I'm in a house and we're dominated, it's just me and my son fighting against these women, and we're just dealing with, so I'm like, we're leaving, and I open that door and he'll try to get over here. Your mom and these girls go first, and then we go. Open the door, or we wait for the girls to sit down at the table when we eat. These little things. And then for my daughters, it's just the other side of it. Go ahead, daddy will go after, your brother will go after. There's so much, I don't know how to describe it. There's a real mystical feel to being a father and being a good one.
And chivalry is huge, man. And it's something I taught my son very early on as well, by showing him the benefits. When you one day we were at Target, I'll never forget it, and I was teaching him chivalry, and he was so good, because at 7 years old, he would walk up, shake your hand firmly, look you in the eye, state his name, and ask you yours. And people were like, whoa, where is this kid coming from? We were at Target one day, and it was pouring rain, and we're coming out, and some friends of mine were in this big group of people, but I didn't see them. And he grabbed up my umbrella and started walking women to their cars, and like 6 or 7 in a row. And I'm just sitting there watching him. I didn't say a word, and I'm patient. We don't have to go anywhere. And all of a sudden, my buddy taps me on the shoulder and goes, "Is that little Josh?" And I'm like, well, he's not so little. And he goes, I see that. And he goes, did you tell him to do that? And I said, no, that was his idea. And he's just like, dude, wow. And it was amazing. There was a crowd of people watching him. And I was able to share that with him on the way home. Not just how proud I was. I was super proud.
Right.
But there was 20 people that were proud of him. And that's why chivalry should not be dead. Because if you walk that way, you instantly stand out in the world. Instantly. Doesn't mean that you're cowering to women. And it doesn't mean they can't do it for themselves. Right. It means that you're doing it because of respect, and they immediately see it.
Wow. 7 years old. That's amazing.
I mean, he's just that. I can't even explain it. Like in that same program we were in, where I learned about the rules of fatherhood, they would serve, dinners in a big group. We would have these weekend events, and he wanted to serve food. That's just how he is. So he's up there serving every time. And that's how his heart has become. And so chivalry fit right into that servant heart that he has and made it very easy. And so now he does it all the time.
That is wonderful. That is amazing. And not that you need it, but good job, Dad.
Yeah.
And that's you and Mom. And there's that's what I think I appreciate. And it might be a little, I don't know. It's not the best feeling, but that people see my kids and they're so respectful. We go to restaurants and people are like, oh my God, your kids are so well behaved. And I'm like, thank you. But that's because we're out. We go home, they're a mess. But I'm glad you
it's hard to do that when we're out too, which is huge. And they're obedient to it because they trust you. And in the end, it's all about trust. If your kids trust you, they'll be obedient. Yeah. But they also have to trust you to make that cop to coach move when they're 12 or 13, because they'll be obedient. When you tell them sit down, they'll sit down. But in their little heart and in their mind, they're standing up in resilience and defiance. And you have to see that and go, okay, time to shift gears here and start letting them go into it. And the way that they taught it, which was so great, Harvey, and I love this, is they said, what are the things that you're trying to achieve? What do you want to get? What do you want? I'm going to help you get those things. Now, here's my baseline requirements. You're going to do your schoolwork. You're going to follow through on your team, with your team, sports team, whatever. You signed up. You're going to finish the season, even if you want to quit. You're going to do your Bible reading. You're going to do whatever those are. But I will help you achieve those goals if you will kind of follow the things that I'm asking. And like you said, teaching them about finances. Man, rich dad, poor dad. Kids don't learn about money. I grew up with a father that was a high-level CPA, and money was taboo. I didn't learn about money until I was in my 40s. I didn't know. He didn't teach me. So my son and I are doing like mandatory training on finances, dealing with insurance, dealing with, all the things that as adults we call hassles. But he needs to learn that stuff. And he trusts me enough to listen. And that's huge. And that's what you've done too with your kids. They trust you. So that's why they're obedient in a restaurant. Because they know you've got them.
And trust, such an important word.
Huge.
And so what we have is what we're raising are children who are obedient and listen and trust us, but have their own opinions.
Right.
So how do you handle children who may not entirely agree with what you teach, what you believe, stuff like that? How do you engender conversations where you're getting some, not even defiance, just difference of opinion? What kind of experience have you had with that?
Kids want to be heard. And so the key is to listen to their entire point, their entire rebuttal, whatever it is, not to cut them off. I was bad at this. I had to learn this. I already knew the answer. He's trying to tell me it's something it's not. I don't have time for that. I'm busy. But I had to make time for that. And so the key is to listen to their entire argument. And then when you share your beliefs or your truths, show them where you got the truth from. And for me, I hold up the Bible and I'm like, this is where I got it. Tell me where you got your idea. Because I'm not basing mine on emotion. I'm not basing mine on what I think or what I feel. This is where I got it. I believe this. Show me where you got yours. It's an open door. Here's the flip side of that, Harvey. This is weird. Discipline. Your kids don't trust you if you don't discipline them. They need to know that when they go over the fence, you're going to put them back over. If they don't trust you to do that, then they don't think you care. If you don't listen, they don't think you care. If you don't value their opinion, they don't think you care, right? It's the old John Maxwell thing. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Your kids need to know that their point and their thoughts and their ideas are valid. And actually, discipline plays a big part in that, because you're correcting them when they're in comp mode from those mistakes. And then you're coaching them when you're in coach mode from sometimes those same mistakes. But they know that you're there, and they know that you're protecting them through that. And it's huge. It's huge. But they need to feel validated. And even when they're younger, you can use the words, okay, your emotions are valid. Your thoughts are valid. I'm a guy. I hate using those terms. I hate mirroring. I hate doing that stuff, but I do it because it works. So even if I hate doing it, I want my son to grow up confident, strong, and be able to have those conflict resolution tools in his belt. I got to do it. I have to do it.
And that's fatherhood.
Yeah. I'd go out and fight a battle for him. I can do that.
Yeah. I have to take care of you. I have to make sure, sometimes even when you don't love it, I have to make sure that you've got all the tools in your tool belt to live life. And that's right. Just everything in general. It just being and watching and stepping back and knowing when to pull them back and let them make mistakes and keeping an eye on who they're surrounded with. All these things. It's this constant battle of just being a dad. It's so important. And it's not until I was one did I realize how much of a discussion it can be. I mean, to me, it just seems like I'm a dad and then that's what he does.
Right.
But there's a methodology to it. There's a method to the fatherhood madness.
Yeah. You have to be intentional.
Mm-hmm. You have to be. And that's a word that I feel like that's just kind of come about. We have all these buzzwords and stuff that's out there. And intentional is one of them. That's one of them. You can't just be a dad. You have to be a dad. There's a difference. Instead of just saying it, I got to act it. My kids know who dad is. And I think that's important too. But we're going to keep moving. But I'm loving this conversation.
Yeah.
We skip the I, we go to Z. This one will be interesting. The next word is zeal. Enthusiastic devotion. So when I talk to men about this one, this is, what do you do for you that doesn't have anything to do with your wife or your kids or something for you, because life is hard. We as men, we have the weight of the world on our shoulders and we're taking care of our business, our kids, our family, all this stuff. But when it's starting to weigh you down, what do you do for you?
Yeah. My outlet is the water. We live in Florida. We live the salt life. We're out in the boat. We're snorkeling, fishing, something. We're always in the water. And my son at this point is so much into basketball, he doesn't want to go all the time. Mm-hmm. And I just invite other friends and I go, because that is my restful place. Now I also go on the beach and I'll go fishing on the beach and all these things. But for me, it's the water. I've got to be by the water. And my son actually not only respects that, but he promotes it. He'll see it earlier than I will and say, hey, Dad, I think you need to take a boat day. And very smart that he sees this. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's what I do. And I love to serve people also. And so, I always say, if you're in the hardest time of your life, go serve somebody. It'll change the way you see it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think you have a very intuitive son who can say that, but it's a compliment to you. Not every person would take that comment for what it really means. Somebody would take offense to that. Well, you don't need to tell me when I need to do something. I know when you can. It says a lot about your son, who knows you probably better than you know yourself. He knows the triggers. He knows when, Dad, it's been hard between work, or maybe he and mom are in a disagreement, and maybe me, one of the kids did something, and I could start to see it. And that, to me, what I took out of all of that is that you have a relationship with a son who's so comfortable with you to say, Dad, I understand what's going on. You should go get out of the water. That's wonderful. You got a great kid.
That's trust.
And you've done exactly. And you've done so much that he can see it, that he can say it to you and be like, I want my dad to be okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go on the water. By the way, I live like 40 minutes from you. We're not saying where we live, but I saw where you are. I'm not far from you. So
come on.
The water.
I think we got a boat day happening.
I'm saying.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. My relationship with him in this coach phase is going to give me permission to be his consultant when he gets older. And he wants to play college basketball. He wants to go as far as he can. He'd love to play pro. there is a lot of pitfalls on that road. And we're a team. It requires both of us to get him there. But and his mom too, by the way. But I need to know that I'm going to be his consultant during that time, because I know how many people are out to get him, especially if he reaches a level of wealth that he's not expecting. And we're a no plan B kind of family. So if he wants to go NBA, let's go, baby. Let's do it. Let's give you everything you've got, every tool you need to get there. And if you don't make it for any reason, that's okay too. We have backup, but we don't need to focus on that. Let's focus on what you want to do. Is this your big dream? Let's go get it. Let's go get it. Give it everything you've got. Let's go get it. And that has also created this level of, it's just increased our connection, our bond, because he knows that I'm his biggest fan. In order for me to be his biggest fan, I have to be interested in some things that I'm not interested in. But if he's interested, I'm interested. So, like, the video game phase was brutal. Like, you could talk hours about how the game went, and I had to be interested. Oh, I am not a gamer, man. I hated that phase, but I was interested. And I was the one, after every game, he would want to tell me everything that happened. And I listened.
Let me ask you. So you have a son who wants to go into sports and possibly be a professional.
Yeah.
And we know that the possibility of becoming an NBA star, making it to a team, is minuscule.
1% of 1%.
Very much. So when you have this conversation with him, listen, I know you want to do this. I know you want to be on an NBA team. You want to play. You want to go to college. You're going to do all this.
Yeah.
This conversation, like, I am behind you all the way. No plan B. There's a small chance that you can do it, but I believe in you. You can do it. Is that conversation one you're having as a coach or as the eventual consultant?
As a coach. And so I'm not telling him that there's a small chance. I'm telling him that if he wants it bad enough and he works hard enough and he partners with the Lord on it, he can have it. However, I have said, don't worry about the backup that everyone's telling you need. You're just like me. You're a natural born salesman. I'll put you into sales and you'll kill it. Don't worry about it. You've got your backup. I promise to partner with you. We're going to go all the way. Let's do it. And so don't let the naysayers stop you, because if they get in your head, just like this dad link thing, you know, we talk about imposter syndrome as influencers, right? It is so hard for me to talk to other dads and tell them how to be a dad. Like, who the heck am I to tell some dad how to be a dad? Right. I'm not, but I've learned a lot, and I've probably studied more than most dads about how to be a dad. And I've probably been more intentional about learning how to be a great dad than most dads. So what I learned is that I have tools in my tool belt that most dads have never seen. And so all I'm doing is exposing them to those truths and those things that I've learned, and being open to learning from them. But the fruit that I'm seeing from him gave me permission to do this. That's true.
I don't know if there's a level of pride that you can have in your kids when you're watching them succeed. Their pride doesn't feel like it fits. Like, when I'm not the emotional type, so I'm not the crier. My wife hates that. You know, I didn't cry at the wedding. I didn't cry when the kids were born, blah, 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 whatever. But when you see your kids do well, because you know they can do it, and maybe they didn't understand, maybe they weren't aware of their greatness. Yeah. But when I see my kids do something, and they're like, they didn't know they could, and they beat the odds and they do it, that level of pride it's scary, to be honest, because I'm like, I've never felt that ever. My son, like, I don't know if we can do this, karate, whatever. You got your first belt, and he was practicing and he wasn't sure, and then he got it, and you're like, yes. Yeah. Like, there's no way to express that. There's no there, and you just got to sit there and bask in it. And I'm like, I do. You can do it, kid. Man. Isn't it? It's so amazing. And I'm like, oh wow, look at you. And that's my kid. And unless I had a hand in that, and it's more like you did it. And I'm so proud of you of it. And sadly for me, I never had those feelings. I never got that. That was never something that I got growing up as a kid. My father, the relationship with my dad, probably pretty similar to yours. Yeah. And kind of how it went. And it took us years to get to a good place. And ironically enough, it took me having kids to build the relationship with my father for everything to be okay. So it's strange, but wow. Like, I don't know. I know it's a selfish thing. Like, I don't think my dad ever had that, it ever got to see me do something where that feeling could kind of wash over it.
Yeah,
So
but
I enjoy seeing it in my
he
kids.
didn't push you into it. Also, like
Right.
that's part of our role is to get them out of their comfort zone a little bit,
Right.
because sometimes, like you said, we know them better than they know themselves. We can see what they're capable of that they can't, and we have to be willing to let them get in a little trouble as they, jump in the deep end, right? Per se.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. My son decided he wanted to be able to dunk, and he started doing all these vert programs. He's training, and I'm watching him. And the first time he dunked, I wasn't there. Somebody videoed it. And the look on his face when he landed and looked back at the camera, like I watched it 10 times in a row to see the look on his face, because he's like, I did it. I did. I saw the click. And I love that, especially with teaching other kids in Sunday school and things like that. When that click happens with young people, you're just like, oh yeah,
yes,
that's gonna stick.
Yes. And it's so good to see it. It's so good because, like, all right, now the next one, and then the next one. So you just need that first feeling of accomplishment, and now this one time is not enough. Now I need to do it 3 more times. Now, and then when you're a good dad, you're like, there, okay, you can do it. Remember how that felt? Now go do it. And I'm just watching them succeed is awesome.
Yeah.
There's no amount of money that can compare to that. It's
nothing like it. Nothing like it.
Oh my God. The last letter in the word prize is E. The word is expectation. A strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. What can we say about expectation?
Man, live by sight. Live by faith, not by sight. Believe it. And belief is in the Bible so many times. Jesus says, if you just believe. We live a supernatural lifestyle, and we do that because we believe, because we don't doubt, and we don't let doubt creep in. And doubt's hard on men. It's hard on us. It's harder than I think women, because we're so performance based and in our minds. And if something doesn't go right, we're like, oh crap, am I even cut out for this? Can I even handle this? Like I said, with the dad link, I love the dad link, and I love I can't not do this, but there's so many days I look at it and go, gosh, this just isn't taking like I thought it would. This just isn't attracting guys like I thought it would. And we're in the beginning stages, and I have to keep going. But I expect it to work. The reason I expect it to work is because it's really not my first choice. It's my calling. My first choice would be to do a marketing and sales program online. I think I could blow that out of the water because I have so much experience and I've helped so many people find their path. But this is what I'm supposed to do. And so because of that, I have full expectation that because I'm in God's will and because I'm in my calling and I'm in my purpose, it's going to work. We have something we joke about called JPP. I joke about it all the time, Jesus preferred parking. And when I pull into a parking lot, I expect to park up front, and I do. Most of the time I park right up front, and everybody laughs at me. They're like, that's nuts. But they're with me in the car. They see it happen. That level of expectation, that childlike expectation, is what I've built into my son. So I don't want him to go into a situation thinking maybe he can't do it. I want him to go in thinking, I'm going to do it. Then if he fails, we could talk about, okay, how could you succeed? Should you succeed? Is that something you were actually supposed to do in the first place? Is that a skill set that you want to develop to be able to do that? But I want him to go into it thinking, I got this, with all the confidence, not cockiness, not pride, not ego, just confidence. And confidence, by the way, I keep telling him, is probably one of the best traits a man can have when finding a wife. Confidence is huge. Game changer.
Because you exude it. When you're a confident man, I don't have to tell you I'm confident. She sees it. That attracts.
That's part of that expectation. Because a lot of guys are like, what are you talking about? You're going to help dads. Yeah, I'm going to help dads. What's the program going to look like? Doesn't matter. I'm going to help dads. My expectation is I'm going to help men become better fathers, and they're going to help me be a better father. That's my expectation.
Did you expect to be a good dad, or did you become a good dad?
I had to become a good dad. I was in a tough marriage. I was being told consistently that I was not a good dad. Therefore, I was not a good dad. And to my stepkids, I really didn't do a good job. I didn't know what I was doing. I did my best. My stepson is still in my life somewhat. My daughter's not so much. They're on dad number 3. It's kind of weird anyway.
Right.
But I knew that I needed to get better at being a dad. So I intentionally became a better dad by studying it. I've been at this probably 5 or 6 years, helping on a small scale, helping dads and myself, and learning and having other dads help me. So I had to become.
Okay.
Yeah.
Completely off the point here, but I just thought of something. Completely.
Yeah.
Since this is what you do, helping fathers become better fathers, is there one thing that some bit of advice, something you could say, something that you learned about being a father that most men wouldn't really think of, a surprisingly small grain of salt that you found when you became a father?
If you don't know your identity, it's very hard to instill identity into anyone else.
Simple, right to the point.
It's something we don't think about, but as soon as we do, we go, dang it, do I really know who I am? You ask most men, oh, tell me about yourself, and they tell you about their job.
Yes, that's the reason I came up with this podcast. That's the reason.
Yeah.
We aren't what we do, we are who we are. And that's the most important thing. And that works perfectly because the last letter in the word P.R.I.Z.E is I. It doesn't represent a particular word. It represents the man that I'm speaking to. So, Michael, when you are not an entrepreneur, a father, maybe an employee, maybe a best friend, a man on the boat, just enjoying life, when it is just you at your core, who are you?
I am bent on integrity as a man. I think that our word is our bond. And so I take huge importance in being who I say I am and doing what I say I'm going to do. In everything at my core, that's who I am.
I love it. You are when I hear that, I hear you are the best man you can be when nobody's looking.
Yep.
That's nobody's there to put tabs or to say you did this and say yes and say no. I'm a good man, even if you don't see it.
That's right. And I don't care if they do.
And that's the best thing.
Yeah. Sometimes they will. I don't care if they do.
And that guy who doesn't care is the best possible father any child could have. Because if I don't care how anybody else thinks, I'm going to make sure that you're going to be a good kid, no matter what the world says, no matter what other people say. I'm putting a great person out into the world. Yeah. And I think in the end, isn't that really what fatherhood is?
Yeah.
Being a good person. I can't help put great people out into the world if I'm good.
I agree. And standing up for what you believe in. You know, listen, as a Christian male today, I'm swimming upstream, man. The whole world's against us. And you know, being Jewish, I understand a lot about persecution. I'm a Jewish believer. And I know that you understand that as well. And I have other friends, Les Brown and I have a program together, and I got to spend a lot of time with Les Brown. And he told me about being very young and what that was like in Liberty City, Miami, and what he went through. You know, we have to not be afraid to stand up for what we believe in as men. And we have to teach our kids to do the same thing, because this world is very wishy-washy and a lot of swaying back and forth and a lot of blurred lines and a lot of gray areas. Not true. It really is. You need to be convicted in what you believe and stand up for what you believe. And no matter what anyone says, you need to walk that path, even if it's upstream. And oftentimes, if you're a critical thinker and you believe what you believe, it's upstream, because that's the world. They all want to go with the flow. I don't, and I don't want my kids to. I want us to make a difference on this earth. I want us to touch as many people as we can, spiritually and emotionally, and help them grow as we grow with them, because serving leads to leadership, and leadership leads to growing. So we're always growing, right? We're always moving forward.
Love that. I love that response. Thank you for answering the questions in the P.R.I.Z.E mantra. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm going to end with this one question, and I ask it to fathers because I think it says a lot. And you've told me so much. I already know what kind of man that I'm talking to. But let's say I had the pleasure of meeting your son.
Yep.
And I asked him, tell me about your dad. what would he say about you right now if I was able to ask him?
That's a great question. I think my son would say he would use the word integrity, probably, because he's learned it. I think that he would tell you that I'm his biggest fan in basketball. And I think he would tell you that I love him because he knows that very clearly. My son often says, man, you're gassing me. It's you. You're gassing me. Cool. I'm good with that. He knows without a doubt what I believe about him and what I think about him.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And there's a few nuggets in there. One, the fact that he would have such wonderful things to say about you. Two, the fact that he would be comfortable enough to say them.
Yeah.
Three, being able to express it, because he's a boy, he's a man just like us, and that's not
Hard.
something we're typically talking about. But to have a son who probably is a mountain of a man, physical specimen, but I guarantee you, if I'm talking to him about his daddy, that little kid comes out.
Oh,
My dad loves me.
Yeah,
My dad
it's
loves me.
unreal.
It's a beautiful thing. I ask a lot of dads this, and I ask specifically for your girl dad, because there's a little bit of a different response when you get your daughter to say this. I've asked dads, like, what would your daughter say about her daddy? And that'll break you.
Yeah.
Because it's important as we live and we want to be in this world. What your child thinks about you may be, and obviously as a Christian, what God sees in you, but what your child and your spouse thinks about you is number one. Like, I can be a terrible person. I can have a crappy day. If my kids think I'm good, there's nothing else you can say to me. I'm good. There's nothing else you can say to me. So it says a lot about what you think about yourself.
I would like to hear you answer that. And the reason I say that is, my youngest daughter was 15 when my son was born. So she was out of the house very shortly after. Mm-hmm. I don't believe I have a lot of the tools for raising daughters that the dads that I'm meeting with need. I'm trying to learn them. I'd love to hear your response on that, because that would help the dads in my community so much. I'd love to hear you answer it.
Something you were talking about before, we're in this world and it's very wishy-washy and we don't know what's going on. What you have is social media and such. And I've got daughters who like TikTok and whatever. And you got all this talk about how bad men are, this and that. And there's this idea of what masculinity is, or what a man is supposed to be. Strong, take care of everything, go out there, make money, take care of the family. I am the antithesis of all of that. My wife is one who goes out and makes the money and brings it back here and cook and whatever. I am a man who loves his kids. And how do I love them? By taking care of them at home. I don't go to work. My work is you.
Yeah.
My mission in this world is to take care of you. So this idea that a man is this, but your father is none of that. But a man, if something were to happen, we'll throw that. I'm as masculine as anybody else, but I do it as taking care of you, of driving you to whatever you need to, taking you to the mall, helping you pick out clothes to whatever, bugging you when you're not getting your work done, making dinner, cleaning the house, all the things that are not supposed to be masculine.
Yep.
That's what a man is. A man can be absolutely anything. I am not defined by specific roles. Right. I am doing what is best for the family.
You can do it all.
I can do it all. So when they go out into the world and they find whatever man they're going to be with, it doesn't have to be some rugged guy who's not cutting trees down with the side of his hand or whatever, but he can do it all. He can take care of the family, but then he can hug you when you had a bad day.
Yeah.
He can discipline you, but he can hug you and take you to a father-daughter dance. He can do it all. I love my kids with a passion that, again, I cannot explain. But I represent what masculinity can be, and it can be anything. Every man is something different. There's no one definition of a man. Right. So for me, I am tough when I need to be, soft when I need to be, but most important, I am here.
Yeah.
I am here. I am present. I'm not just in the house. I am here.
That's right.
And there's a difference. There's a difference between being in the building versus being in the house. And if you had the benefit of talking to my girls, depending on what kind of day it would be, she's like, he hates that I'm on TikTok. Blah, blah, blah. But I know my dad loves me.
That's awesome.
Simply put, my dad loves me, and he tells me when he messes up, and he tells me when I mess up.
Yeah.
But then he's always there to help. He's not the best cook in the world, but he tries.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
you've set the bar very high for your girls now. Keep that in mind. You might want to talk them down from that a little bit, because that's hard to find a guy that'll do all that, you know?
Hey, man. I want them to find a moral guy.
Yeah.
I'm not perfect. And I want them to find a guy who's not perfect either, but he's going to spend his life trying.
Right. Listen, I've been a single dad for 12 years now. So I've had to keep an entire home while doing all these other things. And I understand. I get it totally. But I've also taught my son to be able to do it, which is cool. And so his wife will thank me one day.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Yes, she would. That's wonderful. Thanks for having me. I've asked that question a multitude of times, and I've thought about it, but I haven't really vocalized.
That was a great answer, by the way. That was amazing. You're right. They have to see that it doesn't always go. And that message that's being put out right now is terrible. It's ridiculous. It's telling women they have no value. They bring nothing to the table. There's no talk about partnership and two becoming one or any of the stuff that actually matters. So I'm glad that you're going against that grain. That's huge.
Oh, I got to. I don't have time. I don't have time for all that other stuff. That doesn't help me raise my kids. That's just put this bad voice, just these talking points, and it's not reality. Reality is here in this house, and we go through life and we do our struggles up and down. But when they walk out of this house, they know that they're supported.
They also know they can come back to a place where they're trusted and where they're taken care of and supported, and that will go on as they're adults.
Exactly. And they take that. And I really feel like as a good parent, I have a real hand in just relationships that you have in general, not just in a romantic relationship, but just regular people that you see. Yeah. I'm empathetic about their struggle, about it's tough being a teen, tough being a kid these days. And I can sit there and I remember it was hard for me. And I was not a good looking kid. No girls didn't want to talk to me. I have 3 gorgeous daughters and just like, and yes, I'm biased. They're my daughters. Yes, they're gorgeous, but whatever. It's hard. So they come home and tell me I don't like this teacher or it's too much work. And I'm like, I hear you, man. I understand. You can do it, but I understand what you're saying. I'm building empathetic people, good people. That's it. If you leave this house a good person, I have done my job.
That's fantastic.
And that's it. So
and they'll have those morals and values that you instilled in them. Because the word says, train up a child in the way they should go, and they will not depart from it. And I believe that.
I believe it too. I like that phrase. I don't think I've heard that. All right. I have 2 last questions for you.
Okay.
And first one is, what are you afraid of as a father that you cannot control?
You mean in regards to my son?
In regards to fatherhood in any way. And I mean, as through this history, this time that you've had as a parent.
Yeah. I have looked at fatherhood from the Great Depression forward. And I kind of wanted to figure out where that disconnect with dads was way back. And it was in the 20s. And it was before that, in the Great Depression, actually, is when they kind of disconnected because they couldn't provide for their kids. And so it was hard for them to look them in the face, honestly. They came from farmers, right? So what I'm most concerned about today is the agreement with mainstream thinking. And it has become this herd mentality of hate, race has come back up, all of these things. And my concern with dads is that they won't take it seriously enough and stand up for what they believe in. And it's a weird time because we're coming right off of the helicopter parents into a different role of parenthood as boomers are, no longer parents. And now we have, our generation that's being dads. A lot of us just let the mom do the work and we just go with the flow. And if you want to identify as a cat, that's cool. I'm afraid that dads aren't going to step up into their roles right now. And this is why I think it was imperative for me to step into this role myself and say, listen, we've got to be the backbone of our families. That's our calling. We're the protector, we're the provider, and we are the ones that instill identity in our kids. And we can't take that and be passive about it. We have to be intentional. We have to be aggressive in some areas to stand up for what we believe, like we would protect our family from an intruder, because these thoughts and these ideas are intrusions. into our family. They're trying to break up the family in society, and we cannot let that happen. My fear is that dads will be lackadaisical about it, will be passive about it, and won't step up and do the right thing.
What are you afraid of as a father that you can control?
I think it's a two-sided coin with what I just said. I think that we need enough voices like ours, like what you're doing and what I'm doing, to come out and make noise about this and to step up and to say, I'm doing this, whether you guys are or not. I'm charging. You want to come with me? Let's go. I don't need you behind me, but I will lead you there because I've been there and back. Let's go. Let's get this done. Let's fight for our kids. Let's fight for our next generation because we're teaching our kids how to parent right now as we're parenting them. Let's step up and do it. So I do feel like there is something we can do, but it isn't easy, Harvey. And you know that. This is very difficult area to be in. I have people that I've known for a long time that, you know, are giving me crap. Some of them, others are giving me kudos. But some guys are like, dude, it's all this touchy-feely crap. I'm like, hey, I'm sorry that you're not comfortable with it, but the fruit that I see from my son, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to teach other dads how to find that fruit. Let's go.
I hear that. I hear that. This has been a fantastic conversation. Like I said at the beginning, I don't need an excuse. I just need a place to talk about daddyhood. It is so wonderful. It's so wonderful. I appreciate you talking to me because I could see the passion. You have it just like I do. I love talking to dads who love being fathers. Yeah. And it's a wonderful thing. Where can people find you? Website, social media? Give it all to us. Let's hear it all.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So we have the dadlink.com, which is our website. We also have the Dadlink on Facebook, the Dadlink on Instagram. There is a dadlink.org, which is a nonprofit. We are .com. We are not the nonprofit. And we are building a community that launches in January of fathers that can join us, come alongside arm in arm, and we're going to build this thing out, and we're going to change some lives. So also my speaking website, I do motivational speaking as well, and speaking about fatherhood, is michaelnfineman.com. And you can find me there as well.
All right. All that information will be in the episode notes.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Fantastic. Yeah, I'm filled right now. And listen, any way I can support what you do. I don't know if you're going to do lives, you're going to talk about stuff. Yeah. Find me.
Would love to.
We will talk about fatherhood, and you will have to cut the mic to get me to stop talking.
I love it.
And I'm ready for it. But otherwise, I appreciate your time so much. Thank
you. You too, brother. And by the way, let's go fishing.
Dude, let's go.
Let's do it.
I'm going to find you. Oh, hang on. Give me 1 second. Thanks for your time. Let me end this with the guys. Thank you for watching, for listening, for being here. I hope all this dad love didn't throw you off. But if you're a father, this is the way you should feel. This is the way you should walk the earth. This love for not only your children, but the love you should have for raising them. The love you should have for taking care of them. This is fathers who can be overcome with joy with raising their kids are the kind of fathers we need more in this world. As I end this, I end every episode the same way. We're in the holiday season. This is a tough time for men, but especially for dads. Some of us, we're not around our kids. We don't have that. We don't get that touchy-feely time, the hug. Maybe there's been a divorce. Maybe there's a reason you don't get to spend time with your kids. And this is when we make bad decisions because we don't have somebody around us. So I just want to remind you that there's somebody who is waiting to hear from you today. There's somebody who's waiting to see you walk in a room, to laugh with you, to joke with you, to talk about the latest episode of whatever show you guys watch together. There's a person who needs you, whose day is about to improve because you're going to walk in and show up. So you have to show up. We need you. We value you, not just as fathers, not just as entrepreneurs, not just as teachers or whatever, but as human beings. You have intrinsic value because you are here. So don't go anywhere. We need you. This has been a wonderful episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. Have a great day. Enjoy being a dad. And last but not least, never, ever, ever forget that you are wonderful. You are special. You are a man, and you are the prize. I'll see you next week.